Let's go Mets. Let's go Mets. Let's go Mets. Yeah.
You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Orange and blue till Mets do us part. Spring training, oh yes, it's the start. City Field gritty till Mets do us part. Hit home runs and knock it out the park. Big Apple till Mets do us part. You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Listen to the show till Mets do us part. John from Brooklyn, Ibby reps NJ. We're the other team, I don't care what your friends say. Mets fans, we focus like a sensei. Listen to the podcast Monday, Wednesday. Made a couple bad plays, but we still won. Character, yup, we're gonna build some. Are you gonna check the pod? It's real fun. Just like Mookie, I will sign. So invest with your heart. Orange and blue till Mets do us part. Spring training, oh yes, it's the start. City Field gritty till Mets do us part. Hit home runs and knock it out the park. Big Apple till Mets do us part. You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Listen to the show.
Available now on all streaming platforms. If you love the New York Mets, check out Till Mets Do Us Part. Enough rapping. Let's get to yapping.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Til Mets Do Us Part. We are live on YouTube, live on Twitter, like we are each and every single week, Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. or thereabouts Eastern Time. John Saponaro coming to you from North Hollywood, California. And that means, as always, my co-host, Matt Ibanez, holding things down back in New Jersey. And what a difference a week or two makes in the world of our New York Mets. We have a lot to talk about. The All-Star game for Lindor, the snub for Soto, the hot streak this team has been on, the return of Jesse Winker, the imminent returns of Kodai, Senga, Sean Manaea, and all of the first half as we head into the All-Star break next week. But, and we have an amazing guest this week. Before we get into any of that, Ibby, how you feeling, man?
I'm doing pretty good, John. Thank you for asking. And look, obviously, when we talk about our Mets, we always mention how it's never a dull moment, and we're ups and there's downs, and all that comes with being a Mets fan. But yes, if you look back on our previous 3 episodes, just by looking at the thumbnails, you'd be able to tell that the topics that we were covering were not the greatest. So this week, we finally have a little more upbeat and excitement to the actual thumbnail, people smiling and great results for our team when it comes to whether it's the back end of the Brewers series. We're talking about the Yankees series, what's going to be happening with Baltimore as we head towards the break. But it's good things and great turnarounds. And I thought some great things said by our guest in his one of his latest TikToks, talking about what this team has shown the last couple of days. Is this a final awakening? Are the Mets truly back? And I think our guest believes so, and I'm with them as well. We're going to talk about it. But the red light's on. It's Wednesday. I'm always excited to talk with you, to talk with our guest, and of course to talk with the chat. Let's do it. Let's have some fun.
Before we get into our guest, bit of breaking news from Armand and some other folks in the chat. Shout out Armand, shout out the chat. Game tonight officially postponed. So there will be no Mets baseball that we are leading into with the show as we have over the last couple weeks. Looks like it's another doubleheader scheduled for tomorrow. And apparently both games will be on SNY. So I guess there was an ESPN game or something tonight. I don't know if that was local or just national or whatever, but get to avoid that completely no matter where you live. That said, Ibby, let's get into the conversation with our guest. Yes, I've been looking forward to having this guy on. We set this up a couple weeks ago. We teased it. Does some great stuff, specifically on TikTok. We have Tony Metro in the house. Tony, welcome to Til Mets Do Us Part for the first time. How you doing, man?
Guys, thank you so much for having me. I'm doing all right. I got to be honest, though. I don't know if I feel worthy to be sitting in the same virtual seat as Terry Collins, as Todd Frazier, Sir Wendell, Glendon Rush. I mean, you guys have had some awesome Mets legends sitting in this virtual seat. So I'm just happy to be able to join you guys.
Listen, that's
I appreciate it, man. That's good stuff.
You're being a little too modest. You are more than deserving of being in this spot.
Of course, absolutely.
Wanted to get you on the show to talk about our New York Mets collectively. And before we dive right into the conversation, let's just do the roll call through the chat. We got about 60 folks with us here right now. It will continue to grow as it always does. I already shouted out Armand. We have Stanley Babbage. We have Brad. Clink is in the house. Jeff Cohen. Welcome back, Jeff. And I think, Lisa G is here. And Carson, two
Carson's
worlds colliding. Sick. Shout out Carson, Mets Weekly. That's it as far as the live chat goes, but you know how that's going to go. It will continue to go on and up and up and up. So last week, we tried to talk a little bit positively about Lindor making the All-Star team his first as a New York Met, but we were pissed. We were upset. The Mets were in the middle of their worst stretch of baseball in 2 years or whatever the case may be. It was brutal, man. It was absolutely awful. So it took a little bit of the sting out of Lindor making finally his first All-Star game. So we're going to open right there. I know it's a bit of old news, but now with a little bit more positive, rosy or orange and blue colored glasses. Tony, I'll just throw it to you first, man. Lindor, it's well overdue, but he finally gets his due, and he will be the starting shortstop for the National League representing our New York Mets.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely something that I think it's almost like righting a wrong from some of the previous years, his first 4 seasons in Queens, because he has had all-star first halves before. He obviously finishes as the runner-up, as most valuable player in the National League last year to Shohei Ohtani. He has been robbed of gold gloves. He has never won a silver slugger with this team since coming over in 2021. So it is really great to see Lindor get the honors here and to be able to represent the orange and blue. I mean, I'll be honest, the OPS, it's below 800, so it's been a little bit of streakiness from Lindor, which we've seen. You could have made the case, well, Trey Turner's having a slightly better season, but that's why I start by saying this is kind of like righting the wrong of some of the past years where he has been overlooked, whether that was because of a slow start from Lindor himself or the Mets as a team collectively just weren't having a very successful first half. But obviously one of the brightest stars in the game and has been nothing but an amazing representative of this organization. So super thrilled for Lindor to be able to do that this year.
Yeah, I mean, hard to add to that. Great player, great person, great representative of the Mets. He is the team captain, whether or not he wears a C or not, whether or not they ever make it official. Ibby, I know you and I talked about it. We tried our best to give Lindor his flowers, but now a week later, the Mets are playing good, and you can look at the real positives. And of course, we found out after that Pete Alonso making the All-Star game, Edwin Diaz making the All-Star game as well. Very, very, very well deserved for all 3 of those players.
Absolutely. They all deserve to be there. And, to Tony's point about how, it's righting some wrongs. And I think that I think there was a worry amongst the fan base during this slide happening that maybe Mets fans would then abandon the whole voting process and not care anymore. Cause it's like, oh, this team's playing terrible. Lindor was slumping and they're going to stop voting. And then I know there was a surge in votes for like the Mookie Betts of the world and other players as well. But thankfully, it held strong, and Lindor finally makes it to an All-Star game, and it's great to see, and it's well deserved. It's well overdue. It always feels as though there is this Met burden that's put on players that once they put on the orange and blue, it's like, okay, well, you chose to go there. Well, now you're going to have to deal with a lot of shit. You're going to have to deal with this stuff, and you're not going to get the respect you really deserve. You're going to have to work 10 times harder in order to get it. So now, 4 years later, he finally gets the nod. And I think as though it kind of plays into another topic that we'll hit on shortly, where it's like a new person who's wearing the orange and blue doesn't make the All-Star team. And it's almost as like, is this like Lindor all over again? It's ridiculous. He should be there, and we'll talk about it. But when it comes to Lindor, well-deserved flowers, deserves to be there, and I'm happy that he is.
Yeah, I don't know what I can add that you both haven't already said. So I'll just say, one, I think it's insane that there is some kind of Mets tax for All-Star games and awards. And like, I don't
Or just respect in general.
Yeah, like, I don't get it. Like, we're not historically a team that has been, the bad boys on the block, the biggest spenders, the biggest winners. So when somebody comes here, why are they weighted as if listen, I'm not trying to put down the Mets history. I think the Wilpons did a good enough job of putting down the Mets history for 2.5 decades or whatever. But it's just weird to me that they're held to this standard almost of like, you would think that we had the Mickey Mantles. You would think that we had the Babe Ruth. And, it kind of goes hand in hand with like the retired numbers thing, which I know was an organizational decision that Cohen has shifted away from. And that's different from all-star voting and things. But this perception that the Mets have somehow, like, anybody who puts on this uniform has to work harder. Like, I don't know. I don't see them doing that for the Rockies. I don't see them doing that for the Rays. I don't see them doing that for any other franchise other than us. And I think that's really dumb. I don't know. I don't get it. And I think it's stupid. And I think it's frustrating. I will say this because none of us are in the same room and nobody in the chat can throw literal tomatoes at me. But I don't vote for the All-Star game. I don't. I look at it like this is somebody else's thing. Like, I don't know. Like, I do this show once a week. We do content. We do like my one vote, because I would not be spamming it every day. My one vote is not making a huge difference. And like, Tony, you kind of shook your head too and said you don't vote. Like, I don't know if that makes me a bad fan, but I just can't like be bothered doing it.
No, I think the last time I filled out an all-star vote, it was literally like you punched hole in a physical piece of paper and
when
mailed
you got
it
the
in.
thing at the stadium. Yeah,
Yes,
I remember
or
those.
You turned it in at the stadium. Like, that was probably the last time that I filled out an all-star vote. Otherwise, if I'm putting my email in to Mets.com or whatever, I'm going to get 100 emails of spam. I just can't deal with it. So I guess credit to the good Mets fans. They're better than us, apparently, for going out and getting Lindor this much-deserved all-star selection.
Ibby, as the tomatoes rain in from Armand and Jeff Cohen, specifically at me, but I'm gonna say that Tony takes some of those too. Do you vote for the All-Star game? We never talked about this.
I talked about this during one of the shows that I did solo. Might have been like 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago. I had mentioned that I know it's a hot topic and it's a sore spot for a lot of fans, but I also said, like, I don't live and die with the All-Star game. It's a great accolade and it's something that it looks great on a Hall of Fame plaque that so-and-so was a 15-time All-Star and things like. I agree with that. And I want, at this point, I wanted Lindor to get it because it's the lack of respect that was bothering me, because it's like the best players should go there. But I've been saying for years that the All-Star game is a sham because it's just people who stuff the ballot boxes most of the time. But in this case, Lindor deserved it because of past wrongs and the overall play. I felt he deserved to be there. Did I vote this year? Like, I voted a couple of times, but not where it's like I'm like, signing on every day and saying, okay, here's my 15 votes. Here's my 15 votes. Here's my 15. Like, I wasn't doing it like that. I was just like, here, get some of the guys that I thought deserved to go in, the Mets that I thought deserved to go in, so on and so forth. And that's really it. But yeah, I don't spam it. It's just like a couple of times, and that's really it. So yeah, that's where I am.
Yeah, I think that's when I started breaking away. It's a little bit of a combination of what you guys were talking about. Like, Tony, I don't want spam emails from anything, including stuff that I love. Like, I know where to find the Mets when I need to go find the Mets. I know how to buy tickets. I know where to watch the games. I don't need emails from some promoting marketing department. Like, I don't need that, especially coming from just Major League Baseball at large. And maybe the other part of it was the last time I voted, I would vote. Like, I definitely voted electronically. I wasn't just like going back to the punch cards that Tony was mentioning before, but I would vote like once or twice. And it was just like, that's not making a difference. Nobody's winning the All-Star game start by 2 votes. Like, oh my God, I can't believe Lindor lost out to Mookie Betts by the 2 votes John didn't send in. Like, I don't think that was ever going to happen. So this is a couple things really quick. Mets adjacent. Phillies lead the Giants 5-0 in the top of the 8th. So with the Mets not playing today, looks like the Phillies will gain a half a game unless that goes.
Wild game last night, though. That's for sure. Wild game last night.
Yeah, couldn't have happened to a nicer team. Really. And then this one, we could talk about it maybe later, but DJ LeMahieu DFA'd by the Yankees after a demotion to a bench role. Guess didn't sit well with DJ LeMahieu. Thank you, Daniel Caps, for throwing that out there. Of course, once we start rolling with the show. Yeah. Now he gets to just go home and collect his paycheck? I mean, look, we could spend a moment on it now. Are you surprised, Tony, that, he didn't just take the role and wasn't a good soldier?
I think, he's a Silver Slugger. He's a batting title champion. Like, he probably still believes deep down inside of him that he's capable of being an everyday player. And I mean, it's hard as a professional of that elite talent to accept, hey, I'm not that guy anymore. So maybe he's thinking, hey, there's got to be someone out there that I will take a flyer on me and give me a chance for more playing time. But he's also a consummate professional. So in that respect, I am a little surprised that he wouldn't kind of toe the line, the Yankee way, if you will, and just contribute in the spots that they were going to give him. But honestly, if I'm him, I'm going to Colorado, go out back to Denver where he started his career and start hitting bombs at Coors Field, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, look, money's not a problem. Thanks to Armand, $6 million for the rest of the season, $15 million for next year. So, he's getting paid. And he's following up by saying there was a report that DJ did not ask to be DFA'd. I believe that. Look, I don't know. I'm just finding this all out in real time, as we all are. I could see him just like, look, maybe I can go somewhere else and be a starter. Yeah, maybe he can go finish his career in Colorado, like Tony said, or maybe he's hoping that another team gets an injury and they take a flyer on him for vet minimum. Again, he's getting paid.
Right.
So it is a little weird to me that he wouldn't at least go down the road of being in this role a little bit and seeing if maybe, I don't know, maybe the Yankees get an injury and he finds himself back in a starting spot. So I think the timing is a little weird, but I mean, he's been awful. He's been like one of the worst hitters in baseball. So it doesn't super surprise me.
No, it doesn't surprise me at all. It actually reminds me of like when it was, who was it? Was he in Toronto at the time, or was it Colorado when Reyes got cut, and then obviously he was making all that money. Then he came back to the Mets playing. They gave him whatever it was, the vet minimum, to come play for him, but he was still making all that cash. Like, this kind of is similar. Like, you're looking at a player that was something. Obviously Manaea wasn't as special as Reyes was, but in the sense of good ball player, like Tony said, batting title champion, like all these things. Like, there's always a good hitter. But it's just, it hasn't been there. I have plenty of friends that are Yankees fans who've wanted this guy gone for a long time. Like, they were done with him. They didn't want him anymore. So it's like, it doesn't shock me. What's more shocking to me is because, again, like, not a Yankee show, but I was more shocked at what they said the plan was, at least in the short term, for like the positions for third base. I guess Jazz goes back to second, and third base is like names I've never heard of, like Jorbit Vivas. I'm like, who? I don't know who these people are, but God bless them. And you're in the bigs, good for you. But it's clearly not that pretty. But that goes to show you that what DJ was, offering them clearly was not good enough if you're willing to play Jorbit Vivas instead.
That's like some 2009 Mets shit right there.
I said before to someone, I was like, that name sounds like the name that you would get in a game when they can't get the rights to the real name.
Yeah.
So it's like, instead of Luis Rivas, you get Jorbit Vivas.
Here's odd villain from the top rope. DJ LeMahieu will be a Brave and have an 1140 OPS.
Don't put that into the universe, Odd. Don't do that.
He already did. That's why Odd Villain's the best. Carson with a fun one, just talking about that craziness in the Phillies game last night. Fun fact, the ball that Bailey hit was a home run in 29 out of 30 parks everywhere except San Francisco, and the result was still just a home run. Baseball's great, isn't it? When you add to the fact that that's the first walk-off inside the park home run by a catcher since 1926, that's is insane. It's insane. Anyway, this is not a Philly show. It is not a Mets show. So, a Yankees show. Let's get back to our New York Mets. Yeah. Here, a couple good ones here. Also from Carson, one talking about just the overall perception of the Mets, saying, I don't mind the hate. I want the other 29 teams to hate our guts. I'm not your friend. I'm here to win. I think there is something.
It's also the way Carson tweets too. I think it's very fitting.
Carson tweets like he doesn't want any friends ever. But you know what? I can't talk because I'm pretty aggressive on Twitter. No, and that brings us to this next one from Carson saying, I, for one, am happy Soto got snubbed. I want him pissed off and destroying balls even more. So it's a good way to segue into the snub of Juan Soto. We talk about Lindor making it, Pete making it, Diaz making it, all very well deserved. You look at Soto's numbers, you compare him to some of the people that did make the All-Star game specifically Fernando Tatis Jr., Corbin Carroll. Soto's a better ball player than both of those guys, also has a better statistical season going than both of those guys. And the dude, was it Stowers in Miami, who's a good story, probably deserves to make the All-Star game. He's the one lone representative for Miami. But, again, Kyle Stowers or Juan Soto. So, Tony, what's your feeling? Are you in the Carson, side of things where it's like, if he got snubbed, maybe he'll be pissed, or are you sitting there like, come on, what are we doing with this?
If it is a actual choice where it's watch Juan Soto take an at-bat in the All-Star game or get crazy, angry, super highly motivated Juan Soto in the second half for the Mets, I will take the latter of those two. There's no guarantee of that. But that being said, Juan Soto is clearly the biggest all-star snub for the National League by far. I mean, dude has an OPS over 900, got off to a slow start, but 21 homers, 51 RBIs. I think a lot of people saw the tweet that came out. He's the first of only 7 other MLB players in the history of baseball to have 70 walks, 15 doubles, 20 homers, and 10 stolen bases prior to the All-Star break and to not make the All-Star team. And for me, you brought his name up, Kyle Stowers. It's cool. Guy probably deserves it. His numbers weren't as kind of bad as I thought they were going to be when I saw he got named an All-Star. But for me, the whole idea that every team needs a representative is kind of a joke. Why are we handing out participation trophies? Like, I get that for kids. These are adults. And I am sure all 15 Miami Marlin fans that exist are going to be glued to the TV when he is pinch hitting in the 7th inning. No, come on. Like, if you want to at least slow the death of the All-Star game in baseball, then put the very best players on the stage. That is what will grow the game and get more eyes on the television. So that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, Ibby, look, it's hard to argue with that, right? Soto is one of the best players in the sport. He's one of the best hitters in the sport. He's one of the appointment television at bats in the sport. And he's also having a great year after a non-Soto like start, which we all excuse. I mean, you and I excused, some other people didn't, but I just think Tony's on track when it's like, are you celebrating baseball? How are you celebrating baseball without Juan Soto? How?
It doesn't make any sense. And like you said, the idea that Soto was bad in the eyes of some people is so ridiculous because his numbers were still damn good. But you're so used to him being Juan Soto. You're like, this guy's doing bad. And then I think it was more shocking to me like the players didn't really vote for him either. Now, I don't know if that's like more so of a jealousy thing when it comes to like money and stuff like that. I have no idea. Or just wanting the stories like the Stowers and other types of guys getting in, because they think, oh, it's Juan Soto, he's always going to get something in the end anyway. But it's ridiculous to me when I look at numbers or how some people even tried to insinuate that he only had one good month. I'm sorry, but his overall numbers are ridiculous. He should be an all-star. So when I see Juan Soto, and shout out to NYM Stats for this one, Juan Soto since June 1st, 33 games, a 324 average, a 468 on base, 1,153 OPS, 4 doubles, 12 homers, 24 RBI, 29 runs, 3 steals. I mean, that's dominating. And we've seen the at-bats. They are appointment television. I've said on this show multiple times, when I see a Juan Soto, not just because of my team, okay? I watched Juan Soto ever since he's come into the league, and it's been on teams that I hate. I'm not supposed to like. Whether it's the Nationals, it's the Yankees. It's it was tough with the San Diego, but still. I watch Juan Soto because it's like watching an artist with a pen. Like it's appointment television for a baseball geek, for a baseball lover. And the fact that you're not going to have that where you're supposed to be celebrating. Again, we've talked multiple times about how baseball just drops the ball on so many things, that being the MLB. But I just think that not having a player in that is doing what he is doing is just wrong. It's dumb. But as we've always said on this show, that wrong and dumb is something that's always synonymous with Major League Baseball, unfortunately. So I think in the end, he might still end up being there because somebody might bow out or there might be an injury or something along those lines. But in general, he should be an all-star. Am I going to lose sleep over it? No, I'm not, because I'm with you guys as well. Like if I get a pissed off Juan Soto saying F the league, I'm going to show you what I can do, like really
Yeah.
do, and take it out on the league more so than he's been doing since June 1st, I'm all about it.
Another great one from Odd Villain saying, even the Florida in the 2000 election wasn't this corrupt. Stay woke, followed by hashtag free Soto. Odd Villain, man. I just, my biggest regret in 2025 so far is that I was at that one game at Citi Field. And I linked up with a lot of people, saw a lot of folks. I know Odd Villain was there. We were trying to connect, and I did not get to meet Odd in person. And that's been my biggest regret of the year so far. So Odd, that's, and I mean that sincerely. Carson with a good point. I think it's the timing of the voting, why Soto missed out. He was mediocre for the first 2 months. And then weeks after the voting started. However, Soto has earned the perennial top 1% badge. I think that is a factor, Tony, when you look at this is a player vote. And I think, the players, they look around the league and who knows when those votes were actually tallied and when the votes stopped coming in and all that stuff. You would think that a guy as good as Soto would get the edge anyway, but he didn't. And I don't know that matters, but it is odd. It is odd that his fellow players around the league weren't like, yeah, automatically Juan Soto.
And I don't know exactly how the player vote is weighted as far as compared to the fan vote and all of that stuff. But I mean, it goes kind of back to what we were talking about when we were speaking on Lindor. There's that Mets tax. And not only does Juan Soto have that working against him, but he also has being the record-setting contract in all the professional sports tax on his, basically as a target on his back as well. So I think all of those things came into play. And maybe there is a touch of jealousy from some of the other players for sure. Again, I don't know the nuances and how all the details work with the player vote versus the fan vote and all of that stuff, but clearly is deserving, and honestly don't know how his peers wouldn't recognize him for it.
Yeah, it's odd. Quick news keeps dropping here. Armand saying per Joe DeMayo, shout out Joe DeMayo, frequent guest on the show. Luis Angel Acuna no longer in the Syracuse lineup. I would imagine maybe that might have something to do with tomorrow's doubleheader. Maybe he becomes an extra player that they're looking at or something. I don't know. I mean, that would not have to be a thing that they would have to worry about today. So it is a little strange. I don't know.
Little interesting. I mean, we'll see what ends up happening. I figured that they would, opt for another arm like they usually do for a 27th man. But yeah, it's definitely possible. And I haven't really been following Luis because he just kind of disappeared going into Syracuse. So I haven't heard his name much. I've heard more about Francisco Alvarez waking up a little bit, but not so much about Luis Angel. But his defense and speed is always welcome. But yeah, we'll see what happens.
And I think before we move on and put the All-Star Game conversation firmly behind us, and by the way, if you are watching live, go ahead and hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Subscribing to the channel unlocks all of the possibilities. It lets you get into the live chat. It's the only way to do that during the show. So like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn notifications on so you never miss an opportunity to check us out here at Til Mets Do Us Part Live. John Saponaro, Matt Ibanez, and our guest this week, Tony Metro. Again, before we put this All-Star thing to bed, Top Bunk makes a great point. They also robbed my guy of $100,000 in cold hard cash. That's about 0.2% of the money he's making to be.
apparently this is becoming a thing now. I know Armand. I asked Armand in the chat because when I was searching some Soto stuff before when we were talking to get those numbers. Apparently, Big Head decided to say something. I didn't hear the clip. I can't really hear it during the show. So I don't know what it was. It was a 3.5 minute clip. I don't want to listen to Michael K for 3.5 minutes. But I'm assuming it's something stupid.
No one counts other people's money more than Michael K.
It's unbelievable. It just let it go. You just keep on doubling down. Like people forgot about you. Soto went off. People were more focused on that. We knew that once Soto went off, that everyone was going to go quiet. You weren't going to see videos anymore. You weren't going to see any clickbait because there wasn't anything to attach to because the guy's doing what he's supposed to do and what he was always doing. But he keeps on going back to the well. He can't get enough because no one's listening to his damn show. That's what it is.
Yeah, Tony, look, taking Michael K out of it for a second, I had no problem with Juan Soto saying what he said. I think I forgot who it was. somebody on Twitter said it, and actually it may have been Carson on Twitter, and I apologize if it wasn't, but just where it's like, we need more people like this on the Mets that have this, like, yeah, I'm great, I'm paid well, I'm going to be cocky about it. And I'm taking that to the table. Cause look, if they're going to treat him that way anyway, if the negative perception is going to be this big anyway, Juan Soto's shoulders are broad enough to bear that weight. And I want him leaning into that. I want him to have that fuck you energy. So, and also there's a lot of people talking a lot of smack. And if they had a bonus at work that was somehow hinged upon somebody else's decision-making and they didn't hit that bonus, they'd be pissed. I understand that they're not getting paid, $50 million this year. So the percentages are different, but I just think it's really easy for people to say like, oh, he needs more money. What? He needs more money. Like, dude, shut up, dude. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, Juan earned every dollar that he got from the Mets because he came out as an absolute phenom since he was 19 years old. Has been nothing but a perennial superstar, MVP caliber player. He's won a World Series. He's been to another. He has earned every dime that is going to hit his bank account. And what he said, I think, was more tongue in cheek than anything. I think he was honestly just kind of like messing with the media and us as fans through the media's, mouth.
I agree.
And
I agree.
Mean, anyone that's taking it seriously, does he need that money? Okay, no, not in the sense of he's going to be on the streets anytime soon, but did he earn it? Absolutely. The dude should be on All-Star. And who's to say, and this is, of course, me going out on a limb, who's to say he wasn't going to take that money, donate it to charity, right? Who's to say he wasn't going to give it to, a family member, and I'm just obviously making this up. But my point is, it's his money. Don't count on other people's money. Let him do what he wants with it. And he has every right to say what he said, serious or not.
I completely agree. Sorry, Abby.
Yeah, but he also seems that from what we've seen to this point, he seems like a guy that's very well in tune when it comes to checklists. And what I mean is he knows the things that he wants to hit. He knows the things that he wants to attain. When he had another multiple home run game to be the youngest player, or to be the youngest player and to have the most multiple home run games before the age of 27. Like, he got so excited because he knew that he hit another mile marker. You have these things in a given season where it says, yeah, I want to be an all-star. Yeah, the money's nice, of course, but it's like, I want to be the all-star so I can get that money because that means I attained my goal. Then it's to the next thing, like, he seems like he's very much in lockstep with that as a person in general, whether it's money-based, whether it's statistical-based, no matter what. And I think a lot of people, they set forth goals. You want to attain things. You want to reach things. So there's nothing wrong with that at all. People that want to run with this just take it as the slightest opening to try and poke holes in him yet again in hopes and praying for his downfall like they always do.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And Tony, I think you made a great point too about it being tongue in cheek. I didn't want to bring it up while you were talking, but Jeff Cohen said something similar. I thought he said it sarcastically, and I do agree with that. I don't think it's 100%, true in how he feels, but I still think either way, there's a certain level of like, man, fuck off. Like, honestly, like I know he does. I mean, he's mastered this kind of this media directive where he can say stuff with a smirk and a grin. And I think part of that is, again, his savvy, but part of that is knowing who he is and feeling confident in who he is and just being that guy that's like, yeah, man.
Something like that, a response like, and this is why I always say on the show, I hate the double speak from so many people, especially in the media. We had a whole thing that was about, he doesn't do the Soto shuffle anymore. He's not happy. He's this, that. To me, a response like that is like a media way of doing the Soto shuffle. It's like, I'm going to say something like this. It kind of shows people up a little bit. It kind of shows the cockiness in a bit. Like, that's what you want from him in the box. But the second he says something into a microphone, like, no, that's wrong. You can't say it like that. Like, you look greedy. It's like, wait a minute. This is the same exact thing that he would do if someone threw a pitch that was borderline. He watched it and it was called a ball to set himself up to put himself in a hitter's count. Like, you want the same thing. You can't play both sides here. You can't.
That's a very fair point, Tony. It's not exactly the shut up and dribble, right? Because that has to do with stuff that's outside of the scope of the sport that you play in. But if you want the swag, you got to take the swag. I think it's also the way some guys get a poor reputation, right? And there are other components here that I don't want to necessarily dive into on this particular show, but like you see it with guys like Jazz Chisholm, right? People were like, "Oh, Jazz is this, Jazz is that." It's like, no, Jazz is he's a flashy black ball player, and that's why you have an issue with it, I think. And I think that sometimes you want, like, the media, certain people want these guys to be, oh yeah, flip the bat all you want, but then like at the press conference, you got to put the tie on. And it's like, dude, relax. People, let these guys be who they are. Personality is personality. Let it shine.
I think it's a Mets double standard. I know we've been harping on this already with the All-Star vote and with Lindor. Yeah. I think it's the Mets are not allowed to be cool, right? Like, we are supposed to be LOL Mets. We are supposed to be the laughing stock of baseball and sometimes of all North American professional sports. So when the Mets get a super swaggy player like Juan Soto, all the trolls come out of the woodworks the first 2 months of the season and are going to go, LOL Mets. They signed this guy to 15 years. He looks like a total bust. He's miserable. Then he starts doing really well. And all of a sudden, doesn't make the All-Star game. He has a comment like this and it's, oh, you don't have enough money. So it's just, in my opinion, any opportunity that haters will get to make fun of the Mets, even if they don't have an actual rational leg to stand on, they are going to try and poke fun at us. And honestly, like Carson was saying before, I'm fine with being hated. I am fine with my team not being liked if we're winning ball games, and Juan Soto is a huge part of that. So I am all good with it.
Truman Quinn agrees, just saying MLB hates the Mets. Mr. Nobody said, I hope Soto is the biggest prick ever. Odd villain. We're supposed to be the green bubble text. No drip. Okay. All-star stuff in the rearview mirror. Everybody knows that the feeling, the vibe around this Mets team has changed dramatically over the last week, Ibby, when we just look at what was going on. And look, you and I were upset. You and I were incensed. I don't know why anybody would want to do this, to go back and feel out vibes from 2 weeks ago when things weren't going well. But you can go back and listen on Spotify or Apple Music. You can go back and watch it on our YouTube channel. The reason why I bring that up is because if you're joining us now and you weren't here the last 2 weeks, I don't want there to be some sentiment that we are being apologists for the Mets as they are now, playing better again. Last week, the week before that, it was brutal. It was bad. You can call out a team that is supposed to be better when they are not playing up to the standard that they have set for themselves. And it seems like that worm has turned. They are back now the other way. And it is just great to see, because you go from, forget about the expectations with payroll and forget about all that stuff. We're fans. We want to watch baseball, good, entertaining, fun baseball. And maybe your refrain the last 2 weeks has been, they were unwatchable. You could put it on as background noise. And now they're back to being exciting. They're playing loose. They're playing better. They're playing crisp, and they're hitting. And that makes for fun baseball. It's appointment television. Now, all of a sudden, everybody's bummed that the Mets got rained out today because everybody wants to watch the game.
Right. Whereas last week we were talking, I was like, thank God we got rained out on a Monday because I needed a break. I couldn't do it. I was tired. It's never fun. And I equated it, and I don't take it back either, to that stretch of play being reminiscent of 23, when we kept on saying it'll turn around, and it never did. And it felt like it was headed in that direction almost, because you're like, man, this is just such bad play. It's a far cry from what we've been seeing for the last, like John said earlier, for the last year and a half, what have you. But it's great to see a turnaround. And I'm not going to take too much of Tony's thunder here, because I love the stuff that he was saying earlier that I saw on TikTok about the Mets being back from what they've been doing. Because the fact that we finally are getting a viewing of the top four dominating together, and we kept on saying, it's like, okay, it's Lindor, it's Soto, it's Alonso, it's Nimmo, like these are the guys that got to carry us, and they're doing it. And look, I still have my questions, and this can be a topic that's saved closer to the deadline about the offense when it comes to 5 through 9, and I still have my concerns. I do. I'm not running from that. I'm not saying to abandon ship like we've been talking about the last 2 weeks about the offense needing help. Like, I'm not running from that. I still want a bat. Like, are they going to get it? I don't know, but I still think that it's something that needs to help solidify the back end of that lineup. But in general, it's great to see everything motoring along, and it was great to see, especially last night, to come back to tie, to then lose it, to get down ugly 5-2. You're like, oh my God, Clay doesn't have it. This is bad. Like, are we going to just go back into this mired in this slump? Was it just the Yanks being so bad? Is that the only reason why we played so good? But then they fought back and they clawed, and it's a 2-run homer. It's a 2-run homer. Then they win an extra. Soto gets the hit. Like, it was great to see the fight, because that was something that's been lacking in this team for a while. The fight to come back. And I think it was Armand who said it to me privately in a DM. He was like, Clay, or I think he said it on TikTok, Clay just didn't have it. And my response was, it's great to finally see our offense bail out a starter, because our starters have bailed out this offense constantly in this first half. It was great to see the shoe on the other foot.
Yeah, Tony, I don't want to, like Ibby, I don't want to take too much away. I also don't want you to just rehash your TikTok video, obviously verbatim. But for folks who may not follow you yet, I do want you to hit on it. But just as a little bit of background, like, Ibby and I are very realistic fans. I don't want to put this on Ibby necessarily. I like to say my fandom is realistic with a little bit of a skew towards optimism, simply because as a fan, I can't watch something if I don't have anything to look forward to, whether that's a R.A. Dickey Cy Young chase in a lost season, or, Matt Harvey, where it's like, oh man, like, this guy is going to be something, right? Like, you can find the things to be excited about. Even just a couple of years ago, it's like, wow, watch Cohen eat all this money to actually build up a farm system during a fire sale mid-season. Okay, this isn't going to go well, but long-term, it shapes us, for something better. But it's funny because Ibby and I will get these kind of stones thrown at us, and people either tell us we're too positive, or then the moment we say something critical on this show or on social media or in a TikTok video, it becomes, how could you be so critical of this guy? Root for everybody on the team no matter what. And I watch your stuff, and like, you're very much in lockstep with us, where it's like, guys, you don't have to hate a guy to be like, he doesn't really serve a major role on this team, or it would be great. Like, Starling Marte is a great example. Yeah, 270 is better than I would have expected from him, but he's making $20 million and he plays like 35% of the time. I sure wish that he could either play more and put up those numbers, or he wasn't on the team. I don't think that makes you a bad fan for saying something like that when you look at what you expect from that type of player making that type of money. So the Mets being all the way back, or are they all the way back, is nice to see, because at least it alleviates a little bit of that conversation. But as soon as you criticize somebody now in this hot stretch, it'll be like, oh, you can't criticize that guy because they're winning and everything's okay and it's fine. It's like, you got to find the balance, man. You got to find the balance, which I think you do really well.
Thank you. Well, I mean, I will start by saying that Mets fans are a fickle bunch, and I am included in that. We are not immune to that ourselves either. But yeah, I basically am of the belief that the Mets are out of the woods. They're out of that really dark 3-week period that you guys were touching on, where it was unwatchable, where we were happy for rain delays, rain outs, postponed games, because it was like a job to watch the Mets during that stretch. I mean, the constant big innings from opposing teams of 5, run 5th inning, of 4-run 6th inning, all of that stuff. And then just no fight, like you touched on, Ibby. And that was my biggest concern through that stretch, was that they looked so lethargic anytime they fell. And we came into this season with a lineup that we thought on paper would match up with any other team's lineup and be able to go toe-to-toe with them. And most times be able to knock them down. But we hadn't really seen that the first 2 months. So really, it doesn't just happen last night with the comeback win. But the reason I think they are out of those really bad times right now is really it started against the Yankees on Friday, 4th of July. They fall down in that game 2 separate times, including back-to-back homers to lead the game off. And then they end up coming back 2 separate occasions. You got contributions from a handful of different guys, from Jeff McNeil to Reed Garrett, who has been in the dumps for the last month, getting a 6-out save. And then they obviously take Saturday, so they win the series. It's gravy from there. We all go to bed that Saturday night thinking, there's no way the Mets are going to sweep. They got Max Fried, and we're throwing a bullpen full of dudes that were working at Costco last week. And yet, despite falling down 5-0, they make that a game. They very nearly come back. So it's the fight that I saw from them specifically on Friday and Sunday against the Yankees that really encouraged me. And then it obviously the cherry on top being last night, down 6-2 to the Orioles, who, say what you want about them. And I had a troll on YouTube comment saying the Mets are not back because they beat the Orioles. And I said all of what I just said to you guys here about the previous series with the Yankees. But what a lot of people may not realize, Baltimore is actually 8 games over 500 since May 25th. They have a really talented bullpen. And the Mets, with their backs against the wall in the 8th inning, trailing by 4 runs, get contributions from the Fab Four, as we're apparently now calling them. So I think the Mets are definitely back. I'm not saying World Series parade back on, but what I will say is they're looking more representative of what we saw the first 2 months of the year and what we think they can be, which is a World Series contender.
Well, let's talk about it from that perspective before we head into the break and move on to, the likes of Winker coming back and Senga and Manaea on the horizon. Eventually, Alvarez is going to be back here as well. Ibby, I don't disagree with Tony at all, but what do you think? We've now seen these Mets play, 90 games? It's a lot of the season, right? What do you think these Mets are? Did they just hit a skid? Are they as good as they've looked? Are they this kind of team that is, maybe there'll be some ups and downs? Are they the team that was 20 games over 500 or whatever they were? Which sampling over these 90 games would you say has been the most representative of what the Mets are? Or is it just that the Mets right now can be any one of those teams? And that's why we have to talk a little bit about the trade deadline in the second half.
I think it's the latter there. And I think that because we still have yet to see the idea of this team on paper originally happen this season, where we have the likes of Montas and Manaea and Senga and all these guys in the rotation going through and seeing what can happen. Like, I still think that it's kind of undetermined, because I still believe that we need more help. I still think that the deadline, they should still be aggressive to make this team better, via the bullpen, starting pitching, or the lineup, what have you. But we still have to see Senga, Manaea together, back to back, whatever they're going to, however they're going to handle it going forward. Obviously, Senga's back on Friday. We're going to have Manaea piggybacking with Holmes on Sunday, I believe. So I still think it's kind of undetermined, but I think that this team, to Tony's point, is very much back to being showing at least that they are legitimate October contenders. Like I said, I'm gonna be the same way. I'm not gonna say World Series or bust. Like, I think that this team can compete. I think the deadline is going to also play a big part in how much further they can push in terms of that. But when it comes to the NL, I think that they are reestablishing who they are as a contender over these last handful of games. The rough stretch happened. June was ugly. There's no sugarcoating it. It was putrid. It was unwatchable. But at the same time, this is the first time in a very long time where the June swoon did not drown this team, because they usually start slow. The June swoon happens. It puts them out of the race, or puts them in a spot where they have to go on a ridiculous, unsustainable pace like they did last year to get to where they got to. Now they were actually able to tread a little bit of water as they were suffering. They were still treading. They were there. Okay. They lost first. Sure. It happens. But we always knew from the start of the season, we always knew that it was going to be a fight with the Phils. We thought the Braves would be better. Obviously, they've fallen off with all the injuries and stuff, but we always thought it was going to be a fight with the Phils. And it's going to be that moving forward, because they're always going to be aggressive with Dave Dombrowski. They're going to be in the hunt as well. So I think all in all that this team is closer to what they've shown for the majority of the first half. And I think that and I'll keep saying this, I still think that there's another level, because I still want to see what they can do with Manaea, and Senga and Montas helping when it comes to innings and things like that, and alleviating themselves in that sense, but also being aggressive at the deadline. So undetermined, but I still think trending upward.
Yeah, I think it's really well said. I think the Mets were a playoff team in spring training at the end of the offseason. I think the Mets were a playoff team in
90-something wins. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Mets are a playoff team in the the end of March and April to start the season. They were a playoff team in May. Despite the skid, I think they were a playoff team in June. I think the Mets are built to be successful into October, but I also think we have not seen the best of this team to this point. I don't think they've ever fired on all cylinders, whether that just be a little bit of inconsistency from certain players or that's not having all the pieces at a time to play with. I mean, Senga and Manaea are supposed to be the top of your rotation, and the Mets haven't had both of them for the entire season so far. So I think things like that are a factor. And I also think that you have to constantly, if you are a good GM or president of baseball operations, and David Stearns is a great one, you have to constantly be looking at this roster and figuring out how you can improve, whether that's improving on the margins or if that's raising the absolute ceiling of this team. And we've seen a willingness and an ability to do that. This thing is ever changing. And I'm confident. I don't know, Tony, when I look at this team, when I look at, the hands that they're in, even when I'm critical, and I have been at times, nobody wanted Stearns more than me, but sometimes you have to put a little criticism of like, hey man, like, come on. I still think that he's one of the best things to happen to this franchise ever. And I think we're going to see that we've already started to see it, but I think we're going to see it over the next couple weeks. I really do.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I just posted a video about it like shortly before we got on that we have now had David Stearns as president of baseball operations for roughly a year and a half. Obviously, 2024 was his first season. Now we're halfway here through 2025. And I think in that time, he has gotten the opportunity to assess a minor league system that he inherited that had 4 different general managers making draft picks over that time from Brody Van Wagenen to Jared Porter to Zach Scott to Billy Epler. And so he has been tasked basically with figuring out, who is the right fit for us moving forward, who he likes and who he doesn't see as part of the long-term future of this organization. And like you said, John, I think this is easily one of the best things that has ever happened to the Mets franchise, getting a baseball mind like David Stearns. I won't just give him my blind faith and say that everything's fine, like Tyler Zuber and Ty Adcock pitching for the Mets. I don't love that. Sometimes you have to do it, but I do trust David Stearns to make the necessary moves at the deadline to put them over the top. And I would not be surprised if we see some big shakeups at this year's deadline. I'm not suggesting it's going to be, the Mets are going to send their 3 top prospects for Sandy Alcantara, but I wouldn't be surprised if now, a year and a half into the gig, David Stearns knows exactly who he wants to keep and exactly who is not part of the long-term vision and makes some deals to improve this team for 25.
I know we're still a couple of weeks away from the trade deadline, like really, as things ramp up. A trade can happen at any moment. Obviously, one could happen while we're recording this show. They did go out and they got, guys like Phil Maton earlier last year. So these things can happen. It's a fluid situation. But I think with everything that Tony just said, I think now's a perfect time. Let's head into the break. Let's talk about the players that are coming back. Winker's already back. And where the Mets can continue to improve, looking a little bit ahead to the trade deadline. Before we do that, a couple of really good comments to put this part of the conversation to bed. We have Carson saying, John, they're trolls. That's what this team is. And, if anybody would know, Carson would know. Mr. Nobody saying, by tomorrow, Kay will complain that the Yankees were the Fab Four before the Beatles.
Oh, my God.
And then
sadly, I could see that, sadly.
Odd villain, the Fat Four, Mauricio, Beatty, Vientos, and Alvarez, which is it's another That's
Oh
another
my
golden
God.
one from Odd Villain. And just saying, Stearns will not be played at the deadline. I trust the homie. So, with that said, let's jump into the break. Obviously, I'm not going to keep all of us here forever. That would be insane. We all have lives and schedules. But because there is not a Mets game to lead into, we do have a little bit of wiggle room in terms of what we can do in the quote unquote second half of the show. So, this is Til Mets Do Us Part. We are live on YouTube. We are live on Twitter like we are each and every single week. If you're watching live for the first time, you're like, what do you mean there's a break? Don't worry. It's just a 30-second reset and an ad spot that we use for the audio version of the show. So it's John Saponaro. It is Matt Ibanez, and it is our guest this week, Tony Metro. We will be right back. Yo, just like that, we are back with Til Mets Do Us Part, live on YouTube, live on Twitter, like we are each and every single week, Wednesdays at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. John Saponaro, Matt Ibanez, and our guest this week, Tony Metro. Of course, if you missed any of the show, if you have to join us late, if you have to leave early, you can go back and watch the entire episode from start to finish on our YouTube channel, where it will live forever as soon as we're done with the broadcast. It is appropriately titled Til Mets Do Us Part. That's where you can find us. It's also where you can find us on social media. We are on TikTok. We are on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're on Blue Sky. We're on all the things that you would look for in a show on social media as far as that is concerned. And if you can't do any of that, if you're like, you know what, I just like to listen to a podcast, pop my headphones in on my way to work or whatever it is, this episode will drop a couple hours from now on all of the audio platforms as well. Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, all of those fun places. Ibby, before we get back in the conversation, let's hit them with a quick word from our friend over at Independent Safes.
Absolutely, John. IndependentSafes.com. Independent Safes are protecting homes and businesses with secure residential and commercial safes. Fireproof peace of mind in every corner. Visit IndependentSafes.com today for security that stands strong. And of course, it's time. It's that time where I need to put somebody in the safe. It's time for me to run the video, because I honestly, going into this, I didn't have one right away, but clearly after seeing what that moron said, I think I got to put him in. So let me cue up the music and let's put this person where he belongs.
Til Mets Do Us Part. Dope of the day. Dope of the day.
Yes, our dope of the day, brought to you by Independent Safes, is going right to Michael K. And he's going to get locked up in that safe. We're going to toss him in the river. We're going to throw away the key, because I am tired of listening to this guy talk about my team. You are the man who covers another team cross town. Focus on them. Keep the Mets out of your mouth. Keep Juan Soto and his family out of your mouth. It's not needed. Nobody wants to hear you anymore. Just let it go. Nobody cares about your show. There's a reason why you got taken away from your crew and put on earlier. Very Leno-esque, if you ask me, but nobody wants it. Okay, very Leno-esque. Nobody wants it.
Same size head.
But other than that, IndependentSafes.com. $99, free shipping. Tell them Til Mets sent you. They'll take care of you.
That's a good one. Edward Wall saying, you guys need to get more likes and shares on your videos. It helps your algorithm. You have a great show and more people need to see it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. Thank you. We always say that. We want more. Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree with everything you said. Tony, before we get back into the conversation with the Mets, like to give our guest the opportunity to...
Is that a Roomba?
What is happening in the
How are you? Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry. I didn't know that you guys could actually hear it that well. Perfect timing for your show. My landscapers outside my apartment decided to show up. So, I didn't realize you guys would be able to hear it that well. I thought I had some good settings. Why don't you throw it to Ibby and let's hope this weed whacker's done in the next couple minutes.
It's already gone away, so we can move on. I think maybe
I think we're okay if Elsa comes back. Yeah, we'll play it by ear.
What I was gonna say was, can you let people know, if they don't follow you already, what the best places are to follow you, to get your content, because like I said, it's fantastic. So people should be watching, listening, tuning in. Where can they find you?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Best place to find me is on either YouTube or TikTok. I post every single day to both of those. On TikTok, it is Tony Metro MLB. And then on YouTube, it is just Tony Metro. We do post-game recap after every single Mets game. And yeah, it's really fun. Like, I started this a couple years ago, took a little break while I pursued some other stuff in the professional news field. And now I'm back to doing it. And it's been really awesome to be able to connect with people like you guys and all the other Mets fans out there. So YouTube, TikTok, Tony Metro, or Tony Metro MLB.
Yeah, the Mets content creator space, whether it's, in the form of podcast, live stream shows like this, or, just people who are putting out videos like you are on TikTok and YouTube, it's a really great space. It really is. There's a lot of, like anything else, a lot of people that suck, but there are a lot of great people who are so supportive, from Carson and the boys over at Mets Weekly, to Shay and Sons, to Subway and Shay, to the Mets Pod. Like, there are just so many. Jake Brown, people have been guests on this show. And if I'm forgetting anybody off the top of my head, I apologize, Ibby. I know you could throw somebody in if I'm missing somebody, but there are so many folks who are super supportive. Ryan Finkelstein over on Locked on Mets.
CP and Rob.
CP and Rob, thank you.
Yeah.
There's so many folks, and it's just like, let's get together. If somebody calls you up, be like, hey, can you jump on my show? It's like, yeah, absolutely. Would love to see it. Carson jumping in saying Mets Weekly alum, Tony Metro. There you go. And then we've got Lendog73, who I think is a new commenter. If you're here for the first time, welcome to the show. If you're not, welcome back, saying the TikToks are pretty good, talking about your TikTok. So, and I agree. I can't say enough good things about the content that you put out. So that said, let's jump right back into the conversation.
Yeah.
Jesse Winker is back. I think he's a sight for sore eyes as far as Mets fans go, because he adds a dimension to this team that they are clearly missing. The Mets are 4 players deep in the lineup, maybe 4.5. Jeff McNeil's been doing a lot of good stuff, but like I've said on this show time and time again, Jeff McNeil cannot be a guy who is hitting 5th on your team if your team is trying to win a World Series. It's just not enough. He does not have enough juice. He's not enough of a power threat. He's not enough of an RBI threat. This is a guy who needs to hit, I would say, 7th or lower. I would take him in the 6th place if you can, build some things up around him. But a lot of it is the byproduct of the fact that the rest of the lineup around him has not been good enough. So he's been pressed into duty. So Winker coming back is huge. Let's take the Winker thing aside and look at how this shapes up the lineup for the back half of the season. So I think what the Mets ran out yesterday is a pretty representative lineup of what we're going to be looking for over the course of the rest of the season, barring no trades, which I think they will make. And I think when you have Francisco Alvarez eventually come back, I think the lineup is going to look a bit better, because I would rather have Francisco Alvarez hitting in that spot than Luis Torrens. I know Torrens does a lot of things really well. I know Torrens is a better defensive player, but this team, their offense is not good enough, regardless of what they do, Tony, to carry a catching tandem offensively of Luis Torrens and Hayden Senger. They need Francisco Alvarez to come back and be a guy who can provide a little bit of juice and a little bit of offense. So how important is Winker? And what did you think about the lineup yesterday being, the kind of the representative of what we might see here, kind of going forward, at least until the trade deadline?
Yeah, what a boon to get Jesse Winker back. I didn't realize that he had missed about 55 games. I mean, it happened a while ago that he was out of this lineup. And unfortunately, Tyrone Taylor has been one of the main culprits of the bottom of the lineup woes. And I thought that Tyrone Taylor provided a lot more last year offensively than this year. I mean, it's obviously he has or did, but I thought he was going to be closer to what he did last year with the Gold Glove defense and be able to hit at least maybe 230 and use that speed on the base pass. But it has been a black hole in center field. We know Jose Siri went down for, it seems like, the season at this point. He just had a setback. And then obviously the catcher situation has not been ideal, with Francisco Alvarez taking a step back, Luis Torrens going cold almost immediately after Alvi was sent to AAA. So the way I'm looking at it, first and foremost, to answer your question, John, it's great great to just get a professional hitter like Jesse Winker back in this lineup.
The at-bats have been brutal without a guy like him.
Yes.
Yeah, it adds a little more balance on having a guy that can mash righties. Obviously, the plan coming into the year was for him and Marte to split the left-hand, right-handed DH platoon, and now we get that back. So that is great to see him. Put him in that 5 spot until there are other trades, if there are any other trades. The way I'm looking at it is that the Mets definitively need another bat at this year's trade deadline. And to me, it looks like their best option at third base is Brett Baty at this point. He's been tremendous defensively, and even though he is up and down with the bat, clearly has given you the most out of any of the other guys. Mark Vientos is having obviously the year he is having. So I think you're almost going to have to accept that there's going to be one position in the lineup that is just not going to produce for you. And if it's going to be at any, let it be catcher and get tremendous defense behind the plate. And that is what you mostly get with Luis Torrens. And we have seen that in the past in flashes with Francisco Alvarez as well. So I really think the Mets' main target for this deadline, if they're going to improve this lineup even more with the addition of Jesse Winker as well, is to try to go get a big bat center fielder and just deal with catcher. And whatever you get from Alvy and Torrens is what you get.
Yeah, I don't think that you're wrong. I want to save a little bit of the deadline stuff till the very end, but in general, I agree. Quick comment here from D-Rels93, who says Mets are 5 deep with Winker. They are 6 deep. Ibby, it's funny because I was just kind of alluding to that. And I think the re-addition of Jesse Winker does make them more of a 6 deep team than without him. And my point is, like, I called Jeff McNeil a half a player, right? Quote unquote, half a player. Because I think if you can put Winker in the 5 and now you can immediately slide McNeil down to 6 or down to 7, now all of a sudden he's in a better position to do what he does well. And I think that does just lengthen out their lineup. And that's how important it has been. But it shows you with Vientos not being the guy he was last year. Tony's point on Baty is well taken. However, he's been up and down. I think the best all-around player of the 3 of them is Ronnie Mauricio. I've always said that. He's not been up here enough and been consistent enough yet to grab the bull by the horns fully. You know, I still think even with Winker and that allowing McNeil to be McNeil a bit more with Winker back, I still think the Mets need somebody else. They do. I agree with Tony 100%.
The one thing that we always get crushed for in the comments after we post these lives is that people don't like how we speak on Jeff still because of someone put it in the chat too, the overall numbers for the last year and a half or so. But like, just imagine if you were able to go and get an outfielder, if you were get a guy that can play center field and that person can slot in and bat 5th or 6th, and then Jesse bats 5th or 6th in this situation, and then you're pushing down the likes of a McNeil further, to better utilize that back end to turn the lineup over, which has been such a huge problem for this team, especially during that rough stretch. Like, it goes so much further to helping this team if you're able to push a bat like Jeff down the line. Everyone's like, well, he's hitting so well, he should be batting, he should be the 5 hitter. It's like, no, like, if you can make that guy be your 7 or 8 hitter, that shows you how much depth this lineup has. And to John's point, not having Vientos as that power to be the guy who could be batting 5th, to then put Jesse at 6th, to then have McNeil. It's like that's what is missing. If you can find someone. Now, look, I'm not sure, and I'm still not sure about who that bat is. I don't know if the Twins are going to sell off on a Byron Buxton or if the Mets would pay that price. I don't know if the Pirates are legit when they say that they're shopping everyone, meaning that someone like an O'Neal Cruz is available. I don't know, but like, this team could still use something of oomph into this lineup to push everyone back. Because if there's one thing I always talk about on the show, it is always about roles and the lack of roles that the back end of this lineup has had. Like, even though everyone's always like 3 outcomes for a hitter or what have you, how everyone assumes that for a lot of lineups now, I still think that the lineups that we had been running 5 through 9, notwithstanding this past week or so, have been very role-less. Like, people don't have a role. Like, what do they provide? Like, what are you good at? Like, that's what I've always felt has been missing. So if you can get someone, I don't know who it is, and then we still have 3 weeks to figure this out as to who that bat is going to be. But I still think that if you get a bat, it can better utilize and establish roles for people. It's still going to require that being Brett Beatty, Ryan Mauricio, Jeff McNeil continue to do what he's doing to provide for this team. And how they go about doing this, we'll see. Where Mark Vientos lies in all of this, who knows? Because right now, the last 10 games, Ryan Mauricio is the guy that should be getting a lot more run than Mark Vientos. Granted, Vientos is off the injury, but still doesn't look comfortable, doesn't look that great, doesn't look too hot at the plate. Mauricio over the last 10, I think he's batting over 300. Seems like he's getting more comfortable when it comes to breaking pitches too. Hits the home run last night. Like, it just looks as though what I said a couple of weeks ago could be coming to fruition, and that was maybe Ronnie is going to be this year's Vientos in terms of the guy that can provide power. I'm not saying, and I said then, and I'm not saying it now, he's not going to hit 27 home runs or whatever, but can be a guy that's a threat that you can put on the back end of the lineup that can pop one over the fence when you need it to help turn the lineup over. So I still think that the offense is needed. I would love to get a bat. I'm just struggling right now in figuring out who that bat is.
Yeah, Chris Scopo, another former guest of the show, great comedian as well, saying McNeil is a great 7 hitter. He's a decent 5th hitter. I'm going to disagree on the decent 5th hitter. Again, it's not what I would do, but I do agree that he's a great 7th place hitter. If you could find, and that's the point. If you can get one more bat and you could have McNeil hit 7th most of the time, that is perfect. 2 comments that are just after my own heart. Odd Villain saying he won a batting title talking about McNeil. He should hit 3rd. Saying every uncle would say that, which is true. And Fingren Diaz, who I believe is a new commenter, a lot of comments coming in from Fingren saying every uncle also, sure, he hit 87 home runs, but his batting average is 220.
Right,
you
right.
know, yeah. I usually phrase it as like comments like that come from the worst 67-year-old fan, you know.
Joe D in Brooklyn right there. Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, when you look at this team, the way it is set up, there is a decision looming, Tony. And I don't know when that decision, I don't know when that clock is going to expire. It may be at the deadline or the weeks leading up to it. It may sort of work itself out after the deadline. And we may not fully have the answer to this until the offseason. But I think in short order, to the point that you were making before we headed into the break, which is David Stearns has now had over a year to evaluate a lot of talent that he himself did not draft, that he himself did not oversee as far as development. And now I think you're going to see if there is a player to get, a big player, the Mets will be a little less shy in moving some of their prospects. But the players at the top of that list are all on the major league roster right now. It's Mark Vientos, it's Brett Beatty, and it's Ronnie Mauricio. And a part of that is Mark Vientos is already out of options. Beatty and Mauricio are not far behind as far as that's concerned. And they're all 24, 25 years old. They're coming out of that prospect window. They've all also played so many games at AAA. There is a big difference between a year and a half of age when you look at a guy like Acuna, who's also only had a cup of coffee at AAA, where you're like, oh, I could see this guy having a little bit more time to develop, even though he's only, whatever, I'm making it up, 10 months younger than Ronnie Mauricio or whatever the case may be. So which one of these guys, for you personally, if you had to move one in a deal this year, would you be most confident in moving? Because I do think it's a numbers game. If the Mets could get a center fielder, which we don't know if there is one, I think all these guys can survive and it can be an offseason decision. But let's say that the upgrade is, Eugenio Suarez, and all of a sudden now you've got less playing time for one of them. One of them probably has to go in that deal. So who do you think for you? Not who do you think would, but just which one of these guys do you like the least, I guess?
That is tough. That is really tough, because if you asked me this a month ago, I would have had a different answer.
The answer's been different every day since last year, I think.
It's like the flavor of the month, right? Like, who is the least crappy tasting, right? That is almost how it has been. So Obviously, you saw what Vientos did last year, 27 home runs, all the clutch homers in October in the playoffs. And I was convinced we had our cornerstone third baseman for the next 10 years. And the drop off this year has just been so precipitous that it can't be ignored anymore. And maybe last year was fool's gold. That being said, I saw it from Mark Vientos over 110 games. I've never seen that from Brett Baty. And Brett Baty had all of the top prospect pedigree as you could possibly have. A first-round pick out of high school in 2019. He has had 3 years to seize the third base job and has yet to do it. And right now, the last week or so, 2 weeks, he's hitting a little better. He's flashing the leather a little bit. He's second in all of baseball defensively and outs above average this year at third base. But that being said, I am more concerned with his history. And so for that reason, if there was one guy I would trade, it would be Brett Baty. And that's hard to say because he's clearly been the best third baseman they've had this year. I mean, taking his bat out of the lineup would hurt, and taking his defense away at third base would hurt because I think it's a roll of the dice at this point with Mauricio and obviously with Mark Vientos. So it would definitely hurt them a little bit. But if you're telling me Baty is part of a trade along with a handful of other prospects that's going to bring back, say, Jarren Duran or Byron Buxton to come and play center field, he's the guy I'm doing it for, and I would not blink twice about it.
Abby, before I kick it over to you, the one thing I'll add, because I agree with Tony on pretty much all the points. None of those three guys, Baty, Mauricio, or Vientos, can headline a deal at this point. But to his point, you're getting a lot of control back with some of them, right? Less with Vientos in terms of him being out of options. A team's got to be pretty confident that what he did last year is the real thing, because once they acquire him, they're kind of stuck with him, quote unquote, stuck with him. So that's the one thing I'll add. The other bit that I'll say is, you guys know I don't like Brett Baty as a player and a prospect. You know, I did give him his due. I was, kind of wrong on him not being a major leaguer. And I said that a couple of weeks ago, but I'm with you in terms of Mark Vientos has shown it over the long haul for a full season. Neither of the other two guys have done that. So to me, he'd be a harder guy to let go of. Also, again, him being out of options, I think diminishes his value right now. And I still stand by the fact that Ronnie Mauricio is the best all-around talent when you compare those three guys. If you go back to the big four prospects, I always thought Alvarez was the best one because he's a catcher, and that matters. After that, I thought it was Ronnie Mauricio, and then I thought the other guys were distant behind him. So I would be very, 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 very hesitant to move Ronnie Mauricio. I think he is the most talented player of the three. I would have a harder time moving Vientos, but I would do it. The one that I would move is Baty. Abby, I know you might come at this from a different angle because I know you like Baty more than me. So I don't know where you're at as far as this goes.
I mean, if we're looking at this, like to Tony's point, it's like this answer constantly changes. Like this conversation we're having right now could look very different 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now. Who knows? But if I'm looking at it in terms of, I always look at things when it comes to potential deals, and it's like when I see even fake rumors, like obviously I take everything unless it's from Passan or someone I truly trust, and it's very, very few and far outside of just Jeff Passan. I wait for the Passan bomb to drop. When I see things, it's like Mitch Keller, okay, as the example, which was brought up over the weekend, I think it was, how the Pirates are listening on him. And somebody had put out there that the Pirates, even though it wasn't real, like they're looking at Ronnie Mauricio. And I'm like, it makes a lot of sense to want to do something like that. And where I'm going is to everything that you guys have just said. That's the main reason why you would have to deal Ronnie Mauricio to get something that's going to help you in another area. And look, I think that Brett playing third very well. I think he's second in baseball in OAA behind Brian Hayes, who's, I think, Hayes is a fantastic third baseman. I think he was like plus 13, but Brett was second at plus 4. So he's done a very good job playing third base defensively. I still question as to why Ronnie's at third and Brett's at second. I thought it would be opposite, but again, trust the process for now. But can the defense itself be a reason why somebody would want Brett Beatty in a deal, and the versatility of second and third. Is that what somebody wants? I'm not sure. The bats looked a little bit better, but still not where people thought it would be. But if you want something, I'm telling you, it's going to end up being Ronnie or Vientos, because somebody will take what he did last year and say, look, I think we can fix him. We can tweak this, and then we can make Mark Vientos be a 30 home run bat for us. Or someone's going to say, look, I love the potential of Ronnie Mauricio. I think he could become, a 25 homer bat. If we can get the strikeout rate down to 25%, he could be a potential all-star. Like, I think that people look at things like that as also to John's point, like, it's not going to be a headliner, and they'll be a part of it. But obviously, I think the other part of that deal would be the determining factor in terms of which of these players would be going somewhere. So that's a big part of it too. But in terms of who would I rather keep, I think from what I've seen to this point, like, yeah, I want to see Ronnie succeed here because I love the talent. I think it can be something. But at the same time, if you said to me, hey, we need pitching, which I've said we do. We need another starter. I would like another starter. There's two guys. Mitch Keller is one, but I've wanted Merrill Kelly as well. Like, if you said to me, like, you have to give up Ryan Mauricio to have one of those players, I'd be more inclined for Keller in that one because it's extended. It's more than just this year as opposed to Kelly, who's a free agent. That comes at, like, there's so many ways that this goes. But if you said to me, you got to trade Ronnie to get something that's really going to help this team win this year and have a little bit of coverage the following year, like a starter, have you? I wouldn't hesitate. I really wouldn't. And I know that that's going to hurt some Mets fans because they see the potential, but I always say, if you want something, you got to give to get. So if you want a starter, if you want another big outfield bat, you're going to have to part with something. You can't hold on. You can't have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah, I agree with that, in that I would trade any one of the three of them in the right deal. I would just have the hardest time trading Ronnie Mauricio. I thought Ronnie Mauricio was going to be the when they had the open battle for third base 2 years ago. Ronnie Mauricio doesn't tear his ACL in the Dominican League. He wins that job.
I think he does.
He's the best all-around player, and I think we probably never see the Vientos break out, and then, who knows what happens with our team in terms of the big playoff run and stuff like that, right? Like, nothing exists in a vacuum. But to me, Ronnie Mauricio would be the hardest one for me to deal, but I would trade any of them in the right deal. This one from Edward Wall saying, I would love Buxton to Queens, except for the fact that he's always injured for half the season. And since he's already played half the season, he's due. Hard to argue with that in a way.
It is tough, yeah.
Tony, I don't know if he's available, but to me, Buxton has a deal where he's going to make $15 million for the next 3 seasons. He's never been, the second coming of Mike Trout that people thought he was going to be when he first came up. Part of that is injuries, but he plays an above average center field still. He's a true center fielder. And when you look at his numbers this year, I mean, $15 million a year, if he's on the field, is a bargain for the type of player that he is. Would the injury concerns, and they are very, 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 very real, would they scare you off if he was available, despite the deal, despite the fact that he fits this team like a glove?
No, they wouldn't. And like you said, that contract's very affordable. It takes him through 2028. I don't know what the AAV is on that. He is now on the wrong side of 30, but we are not asking him to necessarily be a center fielder for the future of this team. We are supposed to have a couple of those guys coming up in the farm system, whether it is Jet Williams or maybe Drew Gilbert, one of those guys, who knows, they might actually be going in that trade back for him. But as far as him just looking in the vacuum of 2025, you're spot on, John. Fits this team like a glove. I mean, producing at a high rate, the power, the average, if you care about that. I know some people don't. I think you need to weigh it a little bit. Good on base percentage, and still can play an above average center field for the here and now. So I, like you guys said, in the right trade, am willing to part with any of those 3 aforementioned baby Mets, whether it's Vientos, whether it is Mauricio, or whether it is Beatty, again, in the right trade. So like you also said, none of those guys are going to be headlining a trade, but if they're part of a package that is going to bring back Byron Buxton, all of a sudden your lineup just got potentially 7, even 8 deep, depending on what you get back out of the catcher position with Alvarez hopefully returning to the norm at the MLB level. But we'd be talking maybe moving Nimmo to the 6th spot. I mean, he has basically been able to hit anywhere in this lineup for the most part this year. I don't know if I'll touch that with how he's been going at the top of the order. But my whole point is you now all of a sudden have a lineup with very few holes, depending on who does end up getting traded in that one. So to answer the question, really love Buxton, not afraid of the contract, not afraid of the health. You probably move him off of center field by next year anyway, out to left. Maybe he starts DHing a little bit. There's lots of different ways you can make it work.
Yeah, I do tend to agree. Carson with a good point, just saying Beatty has been rosterable this year. That's the only difference this year, but he still blows chunks. People need to stop trying to convince that this guy is the future at the hot corner. I only bring that up because I did again, I had a lot of scathing comments to say about Beatty, and a couple weeks ago I was like, look, I called him a 4A player. He has been rosterable this year. He has contributed. I do not think that he's the future of third base. I will say that. And then Armand, Beatty will be out of options after this season. So that makes Beatty and Vientos both out of options. If you try to keep them, it's kind of impossible unless they both become bona fide everyday, contributors at the major league level. Ibby, Will saying wouldn't touch Buxton. So there's the counterpoint right there is just, the fear of the injury. And I do get it. It's real because the best ability is availability. But for me, more so than third base, more so than second base, I don't think that a team, forget about what I said about him batting 5th, can a World Series contending team, and he has been better than anybody would have thought, but can a World Series contending team really have Jeff McNeil as their starting center fielder? Whether it's Duran, whether it's Buxton, honestly, to a lesser extent, whether it's a rental deal for Cedric Mullins. I know Cedric Mullins not going to get anybody excited, but if you get a center fielder, you can move McNeil to second where he is an above average defensive player. And then you figure out third base with one of those kids. Somebody takes the job, some combination of them. They're not going to get a catcher. It has to be Alvarez. Alvarez has to come back and be a contributor. To me, if you don't get a center fielder, you're asking for trouble. I mean, we had Cespedes out there in 2015, and we know how that went. And Cespedes damn near saved the season for us leading into that. So to me, I think you're just asking for a repeat of that if you have Jeff McNeil starting playoff games in center field. It's all fine in June.
Yeah, it's just it especially I think in when it comes to October baseball, you want to shore up defensively, especially up the middle. We've seen things, especially as Mets fans, the defensive gaps that have happened during, the months of October that end up costing you. But no, I would take the risk on someone like Buxton. I don't know if Minnesota is truly going to sell. I remember it might've been 2 weeks ago on The Athletic, they had mentioned that the Twins are very hesitant to sell even with where they are. And look, with the way Buxton is playing, coupled with his contract, I'm very curious as to what the ask for him would be. And if the Mets,
he's their guy too.
Yeah, I don't know if they have what the Twins want in return, or if the Mets were like, well, look, this is the guy we really want, would they really empty the clip and get this guy at all costs? Like, our Mets fans, as a majority of Mets fans are, like, when it comes to prospects, we hug them a lot. Like, are Mets fans comfortable giving up, Jonah Tong? If you really want Byron Buxton, are you willing to give up Noel McLean, who's very close to being here and helping this squad? Like, are you willing to give that up for Byron Buxton? Like, these are the questions. And to Shad Keefe over at Shea and Sons, like, the uncomfortable conversations you have to have. Like, if you want someone, to my point before, you got to be willing to give something up. Are you willing? That's the biggest thing.
Tony, I hate to ask you this on the air, just point blank, and put you on the spot, but do you have about 20, 30 minutes left, or can you? Okay, cool. The show's going a bit longer just because of where the conversation is. And again, we don't have a game. I thought we'd be out of here by now watching a baseball game, but I'd rather do this than not watch the Mets. So
no. I mean, I cleared my schedule for Til Mets Do Us part. Come on.
Appreciate that. Armand letting us know, true, Buxton does have a no trade clause. I don't know him personally. I have met him. I think he'd fit this team. I think he would relish coming and playing in a lineup like this, but I don't know. Sometimes guys don't want to do that. They don't want to leave places. They like being home, so to speak. So that is a factor for sure. This is a good one from Carson. A World Series team can have Tyrone Taylor in center field, but batting ninth. Defense up the middle is so important for the postseason. Mets fans know that more than anything when teams rob them with range. 100%. I agree with this. If at some point you have to figure Jose Siri will be back, and both of these guys are elite center fielders in terms of defense. If that's the route you want to go, Tony, I'll go to you first. I have no issue with that, but then you've got to get me Suarez. And then that limits where you have the opportunity to learn any more about Ronnie or Vientos or Beatty or whatever the case is, because look, push comes to shove, unless one of these guys is tearing the cover off the ball, a playoff team is probably going to have Jeff McNeil at second base. So that means Ronnie's not starting. That means Vientos isn't starting. That means Beatty isn't starting. Again, one of those guys probably going in a deal, especially if it's bringing you back a third baseman, because that team is probably going to want one of those guys to play third base. But my point is, if you go this route that Carson has put out there, I don't necessarily have a problem with it, but that means that you're basically, for all intents and purposes, done with all three of these guys, which maybe Stearns is. Maybe to your point from earlier, he's decided none of these guys are really the future worth banking on in that sense. But you are really stunting what you're doing in terms of development. Then you're just pushing all the chips in. You're going for a World Series or bust, which none of us are going to be upset about, but you're not learning anything about any of these three guys if you get a third baseman. Whereas if you get a center fielder, you can still figure out what you have.
Yeah, definitely. And first of all, let me say Carson with a good point. For the first time in the 5 years that I have known him. Way to go. Thank you, Carson.
Oh, it's great.
He's spot on with that 100%. Yes, you can get away with a Tyrone Taylor being your center fielder and win a World Series if he's hitting ninth, if you have a lineup like the LA Dodgers have right now, a lineup that has 800 and 900 OPS bats littered throughout every single position, which obviously we know the Mets don't have right now. They're very top heavy, that 1 through 5. And even the fifth hitter, if you're talking about Jeff McNeil being that guy, leaves a lot to be desired. So you're speaking my language, John, when you bring up Eugenio Suarez, because I was beating the drum 3 weeks ago about trying to acquire him. And that could be the big bat that they add. And then you live with the defensive minded Tyrone Taylor and Jose Siri in center field. That goes a long way towards solving this lineup. I have since kind of pivoted only because I kind of believe that's how the Mets are viewing it, where David Stearns is going to prioritize the good defense that Brett Beatty has provided them at third base, and he is going to focus more on getting a bat for center field. Because if you do end up trading Brett Beatty, Ronnie Mauricio turns that nice 6-6-3 double play yesterday to end the eighth inning and bail Reed Garrett out. But how proven of a defensive third baseman is Ronnie Mauricio? I'd have to go look at the metrics, but even those can sometimes be misleading. So I personally feel the direction the Mets are going in now is to try to make that big bat acquisition in center field. And if they can keep Brett Beatty at third base, I think that's how they go about getting the big bat for this order.
Ibby, I know this is an oversimplification comment, and so I don't mean it just 100% across the board, but one of the things you always bring up when it's going into the trading season is how the teams fit together. And there is something to be said about, again, if you are trying to acquire a team's current third baseman and you say, as a throw in our deal, we will give you one of three players that you have seen can play third base at the major league level, that being Vientos, Beatty, or Mauricio, it does make dealing with that team potentially a little easier. Again, none of those guys are going to get you Suarez. None of those guys are going to get you Bregman. None of those guys are going to get you whomever. Pick your third baseman alone. But they are the guy that you could say, okay, Boston, we'll take Bregman and we're going to give you guys of value, but one of those guys is going to be Mark Vientos, and we'll see if he can hit 30 home runs over the Green Monster. You know what I mean? Like, it does make it a little easier in theory to match up when you have a third baseman to give in return for a third baseman rather than a center fielder.
The tough part with Arizona in that one is I believe Suarez is a free agent next year. So the tough part is and this isn't being cheap or anything. This is just what baseball teams do now in front offices, where it's like they don't want to give away the years. So it's like if I'm giving something away that has 5-6 years of control, like what am I getting that's truly am I willing to give this up? That's why I was saying before, I know Hebrew was jumping down my throat when it came to like Keller versus Kelly. If I'm giving away a Ronnie type, it's because of the years and the control of a player being able to help me. I don't know if the Mets would be willing to give away those years for a Suarez. Now, you're right in the sense of replacing something because of, given position. So there could be something where like, look, we don't care. Like, we're done. We've seen enough when it comes to these third basemen. Like, we don't care. Take the years, take the player. We want to wash our hands. We want to just get the power into this lineup and get up and go. Like, that's definitely a possibility as well. And I'm with you. Boston, on the other hand, with Bregman, that one could be tough because I think if they were to move him, I think that they're looking for pitching. And I say that because they're lacking in the pitching department, and they have an influx of young talent that they're trying to find everyday spots for. So when they have Marcelo Mayer, they have Christian Campbell down low. They just called up Roman Anthony to play the outfield. Like, they're moving guys around where they're trying to find openings. So if they were to sell off on Bregman, I still don't know if they will. I put it very small, but if they were really willing, they'd probably be asking you for like probably two lower end arms because of the opt out. Everyone knows he's going to ask for more money and his age. So that would be probably more of a pitching ask as opposed to the third base. But you're definitely on track when it comes to finding the right players, because I think everyone always loves playing the couch GM and just saying, oh, just take this guy from here and this guy from here. Yeah, well, it's like if they do that, what are they doing? Like, you have to think about the other team as well. And I think a lot of fans, Mets fans included, don't do that. You have to think from both sides.
Yeah, a couple of comments here that I kind of want to address with another comment. They're not bad. Obviously, they're people's opinions straight up, and so I disagree with them. But I think the best way to address them is with the third comment. So Stephanie, shout out Stephanie, says, I'm old enough to remember everyone being upset because the Wilpons never kept the farm kids. It's nice to invest in the farm, but you also need a balance to serve winning now. And then Hebrew Hammer says, we had a great center fielder. His name was Pete Crow Armstrong. Go ahead and trade these people and you'll live to regret it. These players you're going to get are all bums. We know Hebrew loves the farm system. He's been banging the drum about bringing up Drew Gilbert, Jet Williams even, which would be, I think, too aggressive of a call. I think the first comment from Stephanie kind of answers Hebrews, which is you got to strike the balance. And the third one I wanted to bring up was from Mr. Nobody, which is we should have one prospect up, not 4 or 5. There's no hard and fast rule for something like this, Tony, but like he's kind of right in that like a team that's trying to win a World Series should not be on the fly figuring out, well, is Ronnie Mauricio a major leaguer? Is Mark Vientos a major leaguer? Is Brett Beatty a major leaguer? Is Francisco Alvarez a major leaguer? Is Tyrone Taylor more than a fourth outfielder? That's a lot of questions in the lineup. That's how we keep getting here where they need a bat. And I know some of these guys, they might come here. They might be great like Javi Baez was for Pete Crow Armstrong, and you might miss the playoffs. I don't think the Mets have that in their fate, but where it's not worth it. Some of these guys might come here and they might not be good. And then you're like, man, they didn't really provide any relief. And now we traded somebody who could be a starter. Yeah, but you can't answer all of these questions all at once while you're trying to win. So I think this is a very succinct way of saying, like, you need to have a couple less prospects here as we get into the dog days in the home stretch of the season.
Yeah, I'll take you back. Steve Cohen's introductory press conference when he came into ownership of the team was, I'm not going to pay people to learn on the job. And he said that in reference to managers, general managers, front office executives. But I do believe that philosophy from Cohen, and that is now with David Stearns, falls all the way down the line throughout this organization. And a World Series team should not have as many prospects, or as some people like to call them, suspects, until proven otherwise, competing all basically virtually for the same position, third base. So to that degree, yes, I completely do agree. I really do truly think, though, that David Stearns is showcasing these guys right now. He is giving all of these guys an opportunity to show what they can do at the big league level, both not only for the Mets to evaluate, but also for other teams to look at. And we are always going to be reminded of the bad trades, the Pete Crow Armstrong for Javi Baez trade, the Scott Kazmir for Victor Zambrano trade. We are always going to remember the bad ones, but how soon we forget the ones like Jared Kelenic for Edwin Diaz and for Robinson Cano, which at the time we thought was an outright disaster and was going to be one of the worst in Mets history. And last I checked, Jared Kelenic is not even in Major League Baseball. I'm not even sure if he is with somebody's farm system at this point in time. So you do need to strike that balance of being aggressive, being willing to part with prospects, but also maintaining the future, keeping it sustainable. One of Cohen's goals when he first came into ownership of this team, and just striking when the iron's hot. And like I said before, there's no one I trust more to do that than David Stearns, especially now with this year and a half under his belt, having had the chance to look very closely at all of the different players in the system.
Yeah. Ibby, again, you have to strike the balance, like I said, and Stephanie added this. She said, you can't win with an underdeveloped farm kid starting daily. And that's true. Like you can't. And that brings me back to the thing I was saying, the point that Carson brought up that was so well put, where it's, a team can win with Tyrone Taylor playing center field, but then you better go get somebody else. You can't answer this question and then be empty 5 through 9 or 6 through 9. Like you can't do that. And if you're gonna start, like, this team is not equipped to win a World Series if they have, let's just say, Ronnie Mauricio has to play second base every day because they don't make a move. Brett Beatty has to play third base every day because they don't make a move. Tyrone Taylor and Jose Siri have to play center field every day because they don't make a move. And even if Francisco Alvarez comes back and he provides you the kind of power that he did in his rookie year, that would be the best case scenario. But who knows if that's going to happen? That's 4 question marks. It's not 4 holes. I'm not writing off any of these players, but it's 4 question marks. Who's winning a World Series with 4 question marks in August and September? It's not going to happen.
Everything that Tony was saying before echoes the things that I've been saying as well when it comes to the overall balance of things and needing to finding that understanding of what you have. And I think David Stearns knows that, and I've been saying that for a while now, where it's like I remember it might have been the beginning of last year, he said it, where, look, I know people want big names and they want everything. As all baseball fans, they want everything. They want every big name player. And when you have the money of Cohen, you assume that you're going to have $30 million players at every position. And we've talked about it before since day one of this show, when Steve Cohen bought the team, said that's not how you win. That's not, you have to develop. You have to do these things. So we knew that he was going to give an opportunity to the likes of Brett Beatty and Mark Vientos at the time, because this is when Ronnie got hurt, obviously. So you're going to go out there. You have to go and live with the ups and downs. 3 weeks ago, the article comes out from The Athletic saying how, David Stearns, or, small hearings that we're getting from like Will Sam and people that we trust, we're looking at things and saying, look, we know that the Mets are looking at the infield market and they're monitoring it closely because they think we don't have what it takes. What we were just saying before, maybe this team realizes they don't have the answer at third base, which is why they might go into a market from someone that's trying to give up a third baseman. I think, and I agree with Steph wholeheartedly, you have to find this balance. And I think that David Stearns has a true understanding of what this farm system is and what he's willing to give up. People always complain and say he's not aggressive enough and he's not going, you can't keep holding these prospects. It still comes down to the right deal. You don't just give away capital. It has to make sense. What makes sense for this team? And I am not sleeping on David. I don't believe that David Stearns is going to go out there and give you, Darren Ruff, Daniel Vogelback, and Michael
Tyler
Givens.
Naquin.
Look. Could there be smaller things that happen that make sense, like we talked about last week when it comes to the likes of a Juan Uribe or a Kelly Johnson? Sure, I think something like that,
like Willie Castro, right? Is that the guy? That's the guy.
Yes, I thought Willie Castro makes sense. Is he a world beater? No, but he makes sense. Okay, he's a guy that can play multiple positions, infield, outfield. Pick and choose what you want. Good defender, provides enough on the bat, helps you on the back end. But I do believe that they're going to be aggressive. But I caution Mets fans in this. It's like you grow these attachments to players, and there are ones that I don't want to give up. Sure, specifically the pitching. I don't want to give them up. But if it makes sense and you get a guy with control, then I'm about it, because I'm not just giving up the farm for an all-in shot, because when you go all in, it doesn't guarantee that you win the whole thing. You love aggressiveness. You love when your team goes all in to try to get something. But someone like Stearns, I think, is going to be smart about it. So, no, I don't think you're going to be giving up your top flight prospects for a half a season rental.
Yeah.
But if you said to me, hey, Ib, you got a shot here to do a package deal with the Pirates. Like I said, this is pie in the sky where you get Keller and O'Neal Cruz. Well, I won't talk anything right now, because I get youth, I get power, I get an arm with control, I get pre-arbitration O'Neal Cruz, new setting, all the talent in the world. I'm about it. If you said to me, hey, Ib, we're calling Minnesota and we can get Byron Buxton and, Johan Duran, or we can get Gavin Jacks, or we can get someone else for the bullpen in a 2-player, but you got to give up more. It's like, I'm listening, because there's coverage here, and it kills 2 birds with 1 stone. It's deal dependent. I'm not telling anyone that we're going to give away the farm, and you shouldn't want to give away the farm for a half-assed rental that might not even be the right answer. That's all.
And that's a good way to address this one from D-Rels, which is saying, what's the point of winning 1 World Series and losing your future for the next 20 years? One, he's not that kind of GM. Stearns is not going to do that. So to Ibby's point, it's not about that. It's also the math changes over the course of a season. When you have the opportunity to win, you have to push some chips into the middle of the table. You don't have to push all the chips into the middle of the table, but if you have a good enough farm system and you continue to draft and develop well, that's what prospects are for. They either help you or they help you get the thing that you need so that you can go and win. The Dodgers traded Yordan Alvarez and won 2 World Series since they traded him. You can do it. You can trade guys. The Dodgers traded for Max Scherzer, Trey Turner, and Manny Machado, and didn't sign any of them, and have been the best team in baseball before them, after them. You can't be afraid. You just can't. And also, I always say this, and I'm not coming at you, D-Rels, because honestly, you're right. The point is sustainable winning. But Tony, I say this all the time. You can't win 2 until you win 1. You gotta win the first one. It's been damn near 40 years. Win it. Try to win it. I'm not concerned about the 3rd World Series and can we win 10 World Series in Juan Soto's 15-year contract. Win 1. I'd like to see 1.
Yeah, I might be willing to trade my 20 years of the future for 1 World Series at this point. I'm 30 years old, man. Like, come on. When's it going to happen? No, I'm kidding. And that is not in David Stearns' blood. You need to put yourself out there. And that, again, is why I say I have a lot of faith in David Stearns to determine who the right guys are to part with and who to keep in the organization and part of the long-term vision, the long-term future of this franchise. So I have a lot of faith in him. Again, it's not blind faith, but we have seen what he did in Milwaukee with far less financial support from his owner, and look at what they have done. And even in the wake of him leaving, they have still continued to be a perennial playoff contender. They are doing it once again. They're right on our tails for the 2nd wild card spot. So for me personally, I am never going to be a prospect hugger. And like you were saying, Ibby, I am willing to talk about just about any of these prospects trade dependent. Lay it out for me. Let me know if it is like you used an example of Mitch Keller and O'Neal Cruz. Okay, all of a sudden, I am willing to talk about just about anything on the table. Let's talk. Let's chop it up. See what makes sense. And I'm just kind of going to go on a little off topic here for a second. But the way Mets fans are very attached to prospects who haven't even seen the big leagues yet, I got some bad, maybe potentially scary news for you. It is going to be a rude awakening because I think David Stearns is going to employ some similar tactics to what he did in Milwaukee, and that is trading when he believes an already established big league player is past their prime to try to recoup some big stars. How do you think the Brewers got Freddie Peralta? They traded for him from Tampa Bay. How do you saw them trade Corbin Burns to the Orioles when he had 1 year left on his contract? That will not sit well with Mets fans. Josh Hader in the middle of a playoff run. Yeah, exactly. And he won't go to those lengths, that magnitude of those types of moves. But it wouldn't surprise me if those kinds of things do happen farther along into his tenure here as president of baseball operations, POB, whatever you want to call it. So my whole point in bringing this up is that you should have a lot of faith in this guy. You can't get too attached to any particular player. Be prepared for them to be moved. Hope that David Stearns is going to continue to produce extremely talented teams and find those diamonds in the rough.
Yeah, and I think what Steph said here is perfectly put. And it's a weird feeling, but I'm sorry, that's the wrong one, Steph. You had it here. So this is the most confidence I've had in the front office in my lifetime as a fan, and I think a lot of Mets fans should echo that. And look, I see the comments here also, Hebrew, and I'll bring this one up because we started. And that was, in terms of center field, we have Jet Williams and Drew Gilbert. They are, why not see what these guys can provide for you? Why is this so hard for us to grasp? It's not so much for hard. Like, look, we've said before when it comes to the likes of Drew Gilbert, like we think that at this point he should be here, but it's also telling that he's not here because I trust David Stearns and his process and what we've done to this point. And I think that eventually, if things continue the way they do in center field, that maybe we could see Drew Gilbert up here. And I also understand that you mentioned Jet Williams. I think it's too early for him. And I also think that his future's at second base. I don't think it's in center field. I think he's too small. And I think he's better off serving you what he can provide as a second baseman. You also mentioned Carson Bench. I look at that and I say, look, I love everything that I've seen from Carson Bench to this point. His promotion to Double-A has been seamless. He dominated A-ball, comes up to Double-A, and he's kicking ass again. I'm very, very bullish on what Carson Bench could be for this team. Now, can he be a center fielder as he continues to grow? Like, we'll see. I would love for him to be a part of this. And I also don't think he's going to be someone that's on the way out. But he could be on the way out if you're talking of a bigger magnitude type of trade, like I mentioned before. I'm not worried in the sense of these smaller type of deals with players that only have 3 months left on their contract. You're not going to lose those guys. It's guys that you have no idea who they are yet, which could end up being moved. But the more you read about the Mets farm system, the more attached fans are going to be to Tony's point, mainly because the turnover that's happening, especially on the pitching side, you're seeing a lot of guys, when you have Jonah Tong leading the minors in strikeouts, followed by Jack Winiger, who's also, third in strikeouts, who's having a comeuppance of a year, being in this lab. Now, there's a lot of good. Santucci's another one. Just drafted him. He's having a great year as well. Some of these guys can end up being moved. I love prospects. I love the come up. I love the stories. I want guys to be Mets, sure. But if it makes sense, you pull the trigger. You do. It's got to make sense, though.
Yeah, I'm sorry to step away for a second. My cat was doing something crazy. But no, I do think it's Heber's saying, I don't understand because it doesn't make any sense. First, you see what you have before you go out and sign some mid-level rental. I obviously means trade for some mid-level rental. Right. But again, the math changes over the course of the season. There's an evaluation portion of it, even at the major league level. We're witnessing it this year. Again, Mauricio, Vientos, Beatty, Alvarez, Acuna have all been up at some point this season. They have all contributed to some level, but then there comes a time It's not to say that you're done with those guys. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. But there comes a time when you have to say, okay, evaluation's over. It's August. We're 15 games over 500. We're 4 games in first place. Now it's time to win. And I disagree respectfully with the sentiment that there is no third baseman on the market that is better than what we have already. For all intents and purposes, we all don't know what's on the market, right? None of us are GMs. We're not in baseball. That's Hebrew or the 3 of us or anybody in the chat. But everybody seems to think that Suarez is on the market. Suarez is a better overall third baseman than all 3 of the players that we've had play third base combined.
Even with what I mentioned before last week, the fear of a player like Suarez, who's very streaky, and I'm very open to the idea. Like I understand he's very streaky, and he has these home run outbursts in bunches, which is why when you look at his numbers, you might say, "Wow, this guy's having a great year." He is having a great year, but he's done damage. I think he had like 8 homers in just 2 games alone. So I get that some of those numbers can be a tad bit misleading, but at the same time, am I willing to take that risk, price pending, on someone like that to come in here, even though he's only ever played in smaller markets where he's having 1 or 2 guys ask him questions as opposed to New York? Would it be different if he gets in a slump? Would he be able to get up? Like, would it be like another, like he is, Eugenio Suarez is basically what people think a Mark Vientos could be, which is a streaky hitter. He's got a lot of power, but when he hits it, it goes. And when he gets hot, he's red hot. And it's the same type of thing. Would he be able to get up in New York when he's, it's not Cincinnati. It's not Seattle. It's not Arizona. And a lot of, outside of Seattle, the other 2 places where he put up big numbers, smaller parks. So is it a risk? Sure. But is he better as a career and this year than what we have? He is.
Yeah. And sometimes when you make those moves, you have to go on who's having the good year. And it helps if that person has also had a better career. Because how many times do you see guys get traded at the deadline and it's like, oh yeah, they're having a great season, but they're not necessarily like the best track record player. In Suarez, you're getting a little bit of both potentially if you were to bring him on. I don't want to continue to talk in circles. Plus we have to get out of here soon. But the last thing I'll say on this comment from Hebrew also saying, and who's to say that you cannot win a World Series with the contribution of all these guys? You could. Certainly you could. But it's less of a bankable commodity. The proven guys in the major leagues give you a better chance. It's all about chances. There's risk in trading guys. There's risk in keeping guys, whether it's trying to win, whether it's trying to evaluate. There's always inherent risks involved. When you get to this point in the season, you have a better chance of winning with guys who are more proven commodities. Really quick, there's a couple of comments that I have starred that I think we can all just kind of hit on quickly and then get to the end of the show here. First one from Stanley Babbage from before. When will the Mets recall Alvarez? Ibby, your gut, when do you think Alvarez comes back?
I would say I had mentioned when we talked about this, I said the upside of him doing well as a hitter. I said you hope he's up in 3 weeks' time. I think that's around this time right now. So I would say at this point, you could see him back up if he keeps on doing what he's doing. Call it a week or 2 post All-Star break.
Tony, what about you?
Yeah, I'm a little more aggressive. I think right out of the chute in the second half. Just like clean slate, second half, it's like poetic. It's like brand new start to the season, brand new start, brand new opportunity right here in front of you. And one quick thing I'll add to it is when he does come back up, I'm doing a 50-50 split with him and Terrence. I'm not just handing the starting reins immediately back to Francisco Alvarez. Let's try to keep as little on his plate as possible. Let him focus on the hitting, not worry too much about taking care of the pitching staff. Let Terrence handle 50% of the bulk of the duties.
Everything you said, Tony, is exactly what I was going to say. I completely agree with everything. No, it's okay. Honestly, we're running out of time, so that's good. All I can say is I agree. I like to add something to every point, but I don't have to in this case. This one from Armand, if Stearns goes pitching heavy in the draft this Sunday, do you think he would consider trading Sprout Tong or McLean or any other pitchers in the farm system in a package? Tony, I'll go to you first on this one.
I don't think it will have an impact because you draft these guys, even the best college arms, with the exception of a guy like Paul Skeens, they're still multiple years away. So I don't think it's going to impact the way he views this current trade deadline. I think honestly it's a crapshoot what he decides to do at the in the draft this year. I mean, could go for pitching heavy, could go position player heavy, could do a blend of both. But I don't think this current draft will have any impact on how he handles the 2025 trade deadline.
I totally agree. The one thing I will add is, of those three guys, the one I'd be most reluctant to trade is McLean. I could be talked into trading either one of the other guys. Again, not for your rental, but in the right deal, like Ibby and Tony have said so many times. Ibby, what do you think about this one from Armand?
I agree with Tony on the fact that you don't have, there's no guarantees with pitching, especially on the short turnarounds. It's always, we'll see you in like 2-3 years unless you are Skeens. I think that anything is possible, but I think the only way any of those three pitchers is moved is if it's for a high-end arm that is going to be here moving forward. And I don't think that there's someone on the market that makes sense for any of those arms to be given up. Now, things can change over the next 3 weeks, but as I look at things right now, I don't think that there is someone where dealing one of those guys that's going to be helping you as early as this year, that being McLean, and moving forward, especially going into the spring training next year where this team needs arms, giving away Tong or Sprout. So I don't think that any of those guys are going to be gone unless someone becomes available that is unknown right now.
Yeah, that's fair. This next one, I know this could go a little long. We'll try to hit it as quick as we can. I think it's a good one. Asking specifically you, Tony, who are your top 5 trade targets for the Mets? Since I'm not putting you on this, I'm going to try to put you less on the spot. Ibby, I'm going to come to you as well. I'll do this one first. I'm just going hitters because we're running out of time, and I think the lineup is the most important need. I know they need a relief pitcher, but they are getting Brooks Raley. I know that they need a starting pitcher, especially if they do what I think they're going to do, which is move Clay Holmes at the end of the season into the bullpen at some point because of an innings limit. So I know they're going to need guys in those spots, but I've said for 3 weeks already that their biggest need is in the lineup. My top 5 guys would be some, and I don't know if all of them are available, but Buxton would be my ideal get. Suarez would be my second. And then it goes into this gray area of if guys are still available. I would love Duran if they could get him. O'Neal Cruz is a huge wild card. And the guy who I don't think is available, but I would take in a heartbeat, is Alex Bregman. So my top 5 would be Buxton, Suarez, Duran, Cruz, and Bregman. All guys that we've talked about so far. If one of you guys are ready with a top 5, a rough and tumble top 5, you can take it over.
I'll say a quick 5 real quick because I do got to get out of here. I will say Buxton's up there. I would talk on him. That's a more aggressive one. Like I said before, I really like the idea of Merrill Kelly here. I think it makes a lot of sense. October driven also, and I think it's something that this team could use. I still like the idea of Willie Castro. Like, I'm going smaller end guys that I think that can definitely be attainable and where I think Stearns is going to be looking. The pie in the sky is, like I said before, the Cruz and Keller combo, but I would take Keller. I would talk on Keller because I think he makes sense as well. And as much as I like Jarren Duran, I'll put him on this list, but I don't know, based off of some of the things that I've been reading from people that work in Boston, I don't know if him coming to a New York market is the smartest of things.
Fair.
But I still like him as a ball player. I really like, and I think his attitude fits. But some of the things that I read, I'm a little bit weary on that, and it's going to cost a lot to get a player like that. So if you're asking me like between him or Buxton, I would probably choose Buxton. That's assuming that he would be available.
What about you, Tony?
Yeah, since we're short on time, I'm going to throw all of the other like side stories and things like that. And so for that reason, if we're just talking baseball player, Jarren Duran, I think, is my number 1 target as far as getting like the most impactful player at the deadline. I think that's Jarren Duran. The next would be Byron Buxton. Would love to put either of those two in center field. After that, it's Gino Suarez, like you mentioned, John. Then I would go with Mitch Keller. That way we are not throwing bullpen games with Tyler Zuber and Justin Hageman anymore. Just a middle of the rotation guy. He's got some
Very fair
on the contract, which is really nice. And then we didn't talk about any relievers, but I'd love to do Aroldis Chapman from Boston. One hiccup in that, I think that with how well Brooks Raley has pitched in his minor league rehab assignment, recovering from the Tommy John, I think David Stearns is probably keying in on Raley to be that deadline acquisition left-handed reliever for this pen. So I think Chapman's probably not going to be an option for them.
Yeah, I think he fits a team perspective. I don't like Aroldis Chapman, like Douglas Barnes. I don't want Chapman on this team. As a person off the field, I'm not big on him.
Yeah.
I hear you.
I do find it hilarious that Hebrew Hammer doesn't want Jared Duran either. I don't know who he would want to get. I mean, like, if Carson Benz turned into Jaron Duran, we'd all be dancing in the streets. I don't know. I just, if you don't want, like, I can't get behind it. Anyway, this has been a jam-packed episode. We've over 2 hours for the first time in like 3 months. We've got to get out of here. Tony, thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
doing
Tony.
The show. One more time, just hit them with where they can find your content on the daily.
Yeah, you guys can find me on YouTube or on TikTok. It's just Tony Metro. I think TikTok might be Tony Metro MLB, but honestly, if you just start with Tony Metro, you'll find me.
Easy enough. We didn't talk about Senga and Manaea. They're coming back this weekend, barring no last-second setbacks.
It's a good day.
Yeah,
that's all you need. It's a good day.
We'll see them pitch, and then we'll talk about them next week. Ibby, I know you're going to do a different kind of show next week.
Yeah.
Probably with Keith from Shea and Sons. We're not going to do our standard show. We're going to take off for the All-Star break. Plus, I'm going to be out of the country for a wedding. So you guys will do something else that'll fill that gap, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to do a little bit of a trade deadline type of fun game show type thing. Keith is still working through some of the kinks. He's going to fill me in, but there will be something on the channel, but it's going to be through the Shea and Sons vehicle, if you will, but it'll still be streamed here. Not sure if it's going to be an audio version. We'll see on that, but it's definitely going to be on YouTube, and I'll try to get some cut-ups for TikTok as well.
All right, we will work on that, guys. This has been amazing. Enjoy the next couple days of Mets baseball. Then we'll get into the All-Star break. We'll be back with our regularly scheduled show the week after the All-Star break. But stay tuned. If you got your notifications on, you will not miss anytime we're going to drop an episode or go live. Again, it's been a great 2+ hours. Thank you again to Tony Metro for being here, giving us so much of his time. You guys know me. You guys know Ibby. This is Til Mets Do Us Part, live on YouTube, live on Twitter, and we will see you, well, I guess in a couple weeks. Peace.